The ship Defiance drifted through space like a wounded animal looking for a place to die. Captain Han Wu stood on the bridge watching the stars through cracked windows. His uniform was patched and dirty. Behind him, 50,000 people waited, in the dark corridors of their dying home. "Captain, the engines are getting worse," said Engineer Li Jun. His voice was tired. He had been working for days without sleep. "We have maybe 6 hours before they shut down completely." Han Wu nodded but said nothing. 6 hours to find sanctuary. 6 hours before 50,000 humans would be trapped in dead space with no way home. There was no home anyway. Earth was gone. The colonies were ash. This broken ship carried all that remained of their people. "Sir, I'm picking up signals," called Communications Officer Kim Ray from her station. "It's the Valoria system. 3 planets, the third one has cities." Han Wu felt a spark of hope. The Valorians were known across the galaxy as peaceful people. They had never fought a war. Their crystal cities were famous for their beauty. If anyone would help refugees, it would be them. "Open a channel," Han Wu ordered. Kim Ray worked at her controls. Static filled the bridge, then cleared. "Channel open, sir." Han Wu straightened his uniform and looked into the camera. "This is Captain Han Wu of the human vessel Defiance. We are carrying 50,000 civilians. Our ship is dying. We request permission to enter your system and seek shelter." They waited. The seconds stretched into minutes. Han Wu could hear his own heartbeat. Behind him, the bridge crew held their breath. Finally, a voice answered. It was musical, like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "Human vessel, this is Valoria Prime Traffic Control. You are not welcome in this system. Please alter course immediately." The words hit Han Wu like a physical blow. "Please reconsider. We have children aboard. Elderly people. We need only temporary shelter while we repair our ship. The Galactic Federation has classified humans as a dangerous species," the voice replied. "We cannot allow you to approach our world." Han Wu closed his eyes. The Federation. Always the Federation. After first contact had gone wrong, they had branded humanity as savages. Every human colony had been marked for destruction. Every human ship was turned away from civilized space. "We are not soldiers," Han Wu said. "We are refugees. We have done nothing wrong." There was another long pause. Then a different voice came through the speakers. This one was deeper, more thoughtful. "Captain Han Wu, I am Ambassador Kang Su of the Valorian Council. I have been monitoring your transmission. Ambassador, please, we need help." "I understand your situation," Kang Su said, "but my people fear humans. The Federation has told terrible stories about your species. They say you are violent, that you bring war wherever you go." Han Wu looked around the bridge. He saw tired faces and worn equipment. He saw people who had lost everything but still helped each other. "We are not what they say we are." "Perhaps," Kang Su replied. "But perception shapes reality in politics. I am calling an emergency session of the Council. We will discuss your request." The channel closed. Han Wu turned to his crew. "Li Jun, how much time do we have?" 4 hours, maybe 5 if I push the reactors beyond safe limits." "Do it." Li Jun nodded and hurried from the bridge. Han Wu walked to the observation window. Through the cracks in the glass, he could see Valoria Prime in the distance. It was a beautiful world of blue oceans and white clouds. Crystal spires reached up from the surface like frozen lightning. Dr. Park Mina entered the bridge carrying a data pad. She was the ship's chief scientist, and one of the few people Han Wu completely trusted. "Captain, I've been analyzing the local space around Valoria. Something is wrong." "What do you mean?" Park Mina showed him the data pad. The screen was filled with wave patterns and energy readings. "I'm detecting unusual radiation signatures at the edge of the system. They don't match anything in our databases." Han Wu studied the display. "Could it be natural phenomena?" "I don't think so. The patterns are too regular, too organized." Park Mina looked worried. "Sir, I think something is coming." Before Han Wu could respond, Kim Ray called out from her station. "Captain, we're receiving another transmission from Valoria Prime." On screen, The main display showed a tall figure made of living crystal. This was a Valorian in their natural form, beautiful and alien like a statue carved from pure light. When it spoke, its voice created harmonics that made the air itself sing. Captain Han Wu, I am Council Leader Yun Seo. We have reached a decision regarding your request. Han Wu waited. His hands were steady, but his heart was racing. The Council has voted. You may not land on Valoria Prime. However, we will allow you to establish a temporary settlement on our third moon. It has breathable atmosphere, but no permanent structures. It was not much, but it was something. Thank you, Council Leader. We accept your offer. Be warned, Captain. You will remain on the moon under strict supervision. Any aggressive action will result in immediate expulsion from our system. Your people will be provided with basic supplies, but nothing more. Your transmission ended. Han Wu felt relief mixed with shame. They were being treated like dangerous animals, but at least they would live. Set course for the third moon, he ordered. As the Defiance limped toward their new prison, Park Mina continued, studying her readings. The strange signals at the edge of the system were getting stronger. Something was definitely coming toward Valoria, something big. She tried to contact the Valorian government about her findings, but they would not listen. To them, she was just another dangerous human trying to cause trouble. They had made their decision about humanity, and nothing would change their minds. The Defiance reached the barren moon 6 hours later. The engines died just as they entered orbit. Li Jun had performed a miracle keeping them running so long. Now 50,000 humans looked down at their new home through the viewports. Pia, moon was gray and lifeless. No trees, no rivers, no beauty. Just rocks and dust under an alien sky. But it had air they could breathe and gravity that would not crush them. It would have to be enough. As the first shuttles prepared to ferry people to the surface, Park Mina made one final attempt to warn the Valorians about the approaching danger. Again, they refused to listen. Humanity had found shelter, but Park Mina feared it would not matter. Something terrible was coming to Valoria, and when it arrived, their small moon would offer no protection at all. 3 weeks had passed since the humans landed on the barren moon. The refugee camp looked like a small city now. Thousands of metal shelters covered the gray landscape. People had made gardens in boxes and painted murals on the walls. Children played between the buildings while their parents worked to build a new life. Engineer Li Jun wiped sweat from his face as he stood before a pile of salvaged parts. The Defiance hung in orbit above them, like a dead whale. Every day, his teams stripped more pieces from the ship to keep their settlement running. Power generators, water recyclers, communication arrays, everything they needed to survive. The main reactor housing is cracked beyond repair, said his assistant, Engineer So Min. She was young but brilliant with machines. We can't fix the ship with what we have. Li Jun nodded. He had known this for days but hoped for a miracle. What about the smaller engines? Maybe. If the Valorians would trade us some rare metals. So Min looked toward the crystal cities visible on the horizon of Valoria Prime, but they won't even talk to us. Every week, supply ships came from the planet below. They dropped food and basic materials at the edge of the camp, then left without speaking to anyone. The Valorians treated the humans like wild animals that needed feeding but not contact. Captain Han Wu watched this latest supply drop from the camp's command center. The crystal ship landed, unloaded its cargo, and departed within minutes. No communication, no acknowledgement that humans were even there. They're afraid of us, said Ambassador Kang Su. He had remained on Valoria Prime as the human representative, though the Council rarely listened to him. The Federation has filled their minds with stories of human violence. Han Wu turned from the window. Have you made any progress with the Council? Small steps. Some younger Valorians are curious about humans. They ask questions about Earth, about our culture, but the older Council members refuse to change their minds. Dr. Park Mina entered the command center carrying her data pad. She looked worried, which had become her normal expression over the past week. Captain, the signals are getting stronger. Han Wu sighed. Park Mina had been tracking the mysterious energy patterns for weeks. She was convinced something dangerous was approaching the Valoria system. But every time she tried to warn the Valorians, they dismissed her concerns as human deception. "Show me," Han Wu said. Park Mina activated a holographic display. The image showed the outer edge of the Valoria system. Strange waves of energy pulsed through space like ripples in a pond. The patterns are becoming more organized, more focused. Whatever is generating these signals is getting closer. How close? At current speed, they'll reach the outer planets in 2 weeks. Han Wu studied the display. The energy patterns looked wrong somehow, unnatural. What could cause readings like this? I don't know. The signatures don't match anything in our databases. But the power levels are enormous. Whatever is out there could destroy entire planets. Before anyone could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the command center. Kim Ray rushed to her communication station. "Captain, we're receiving an emergency broadcast from Valoria Prime." "Put it through." The main screen flickered to life, showing Council Leader Yun Seo. The crystal being's usual calm was replaced by visible distress. "Citizens of Valoria, we have detected unknown vessels at the edge of our system. Long-range sensors show multiple large objects moving toward our world." Han Wu looked at Park Mina. She had been right. The broadcast continued. "We have attempted to establish communication with these vessels but received no response. As a precaution, all civilian traffic is suspended. Our defense fleet is being mobilized." The transmission ended. Han Wu immediately tried to contact Valoria Prime. "This is Captain Han Wu. We have been tracking those energy signatures for weeks. We need to discuss defensive strategies." The response came quickly. "Human vessel, this is not your concern. Maintain your position on the moon." "We have military experience," Han Wu insisted. "Our species has fought wars. We can help. We will not be contaminated by human violence." The voice was cold and final. "This conversation is over." The channel closed. Han Wu stared at the dead screen in frustration. The Valorians were facing an unknown threat, but their fear of humans was stronger than their need for help. Over the next few days, more information reached the human camp. The approaching objects were massive, larger than any known ships. They moved in perfect formation and ignored all attempts at communication. Long-range scans revealed no life signs, only vast mechanical structures. Dr. Park Mina worked day and night analyzing the data. "These aren't exploration ships," she told Han Wu. "Look at the energy patterns. These vessels are designed for one purpose, which is consumption. They're strip mining the outer asteroids as they pass, converting the raw materials into more ships." The implications hit Han Wu like a physical blow. They're not exploring, they're harvesting. The entire system. Everything. They'll strip the planets down to their cores. Reports from Valoria Prime became increasingly desperate. The crystalline beings had never faced a real threat before. Their ships were designed for beauty and scientific research, not warfare. They had elegant hulls that sparkled in sunlight, but no weapons, no armor, no military tactics. Li Jun approached Han Wu with a grim proposal. "Captain, I've been thinking about our situation. The Defiance can't fly, but she still has her fusion reactors." "What are you suggesting?" "We could modify the ship, turn her into a weapon, ram one of those harvester vessels at high speed while overloading the reactors." Li Jun's voice was steady. "It would destroy whatever we hit." Han Wu understood immediately. "And everyone aboard?" "Yes, sir. Everyone aboard." The idea hung in the air between them. 50,000 people trading their lives for a chance to stop the harvesters. It was exactly the kind of savage, violent solution the Valorians expected from humans. Ambassador Kang Su returned from Valoria Prime with news from the council meeting. "They've rejected all human offers of assistance. Some council members suggested we might be working with the harvesters, that this is all a human plot to invade their world." Han Wu closed his eyes. Even facing extinction, the Valorians could not see past their prejudices. They would rather die pure than live with human help. But as the harvester fleet drew closer, and the first outer planets began to disappear, some Valorians started asking different questions. Maybe the monsters they feared were not the ones living on their moon. Maybe the real monsters were already coming for them all. The harvester fleet filled the outer system like a plague of metal locusts. Captain Han Wu stood in the observation deck watching through telescopes as the massive ships worked. They moved from asteroid to asteroid, planet to planet, consuming everything in their path. "How many ships?" he asked Dr. Park Mina. She checked her instruments. "Over 3,000. Each one is the size of a city. They're not just harvesting materials anymore, Captain. They're building new ships from what they consume." Han Wu watched as a small moon disappeared into the belly of a harvester. Within hours, 3 new vessels emerged from construction bays. The fleet was growing, even as it destroyed. Have the Valorians tried to communicate with them? Every day, for the past week. The harvesters don't respond to any signals, they just keep working. Park Mina's voice was grim. "Captain, at their current rate, they'll reach Valoria Prime in 4 days. 4 days." Han Wu turned from the telescope and walked to the communication station. "Get me Ambassador Kang Su on Valoria Prime." The channel opened, showing the familiar crystal spires in the background. Kang Su's face was tired. He had been working day and night trying to convince the Valorian Council to accept human help. "Captain, the situation here is getting desperate. The Council is in constant session, but they can't agree on anything. Half want to evacuate the planet. The other half still believe this is somehow a human trick." "What about their defense fleet?" 12 ships. Beautiful vessels, but they have no weapons. They were designed for exploration and research. Kang Su shook his head. "The Valorians have lived in peace for 1,000 years. They don't understand war." Han Wu looked around the command center at his crew. These people understood war very well. They had watched their homeworld burn. They had fled through space as colonies fell behind them. They knew what it meant to fight for survival. "Kang Su, tell the Council we're offering our help one final time. We have military knowledge they need." "I'll try, Captain, but don't expect miracles." The channel closed. Han Wu turned to Engineer Li Jun, who had been working on ship modifications for days. "How is the project coming?" "We can do it, Captain. Turn the Defiance into a kinetic weapon. The fusion reactors will create a massive explosion when they overload. If we can ram the command ship in the center of their fleet, it might disrupt their coordination." Commander Shin-A stepped forward. She was the ship's tactical officer and understood warfare better than anyone. "The harvesters move in perfect formation. They share information instantly. If we can destroy their central command, the rest might become confused." "Might," Han Wu repeated. "What are our chances?" "Low," Shin-A admitted. "We'd have to get through their outer defenses. Ram the command ship at maximum speed, and pray the explosion is big enough to matter. And everyone dies." "Everyone dies," she confirmed. Han Wu called a meeting of all department heads. 50 people gathered in the main assembly hall. These were the leaders of the human survivors: teachers, doctors, engineers, parents, people who had already lost everything once. "You all know our situation," Han Wu began. "The harvesters will reach Valoria Prime in 4 days. The Valorians won't accept our help, but we can still do something." He, explained Li Jun's plan. "Turn the Defiance into a weapon. Ram the harvester command ship. Trade 50,000 human lives for a chance to save the Valorian world." The room was quiet when he finished. These people had come so far, survived so much. Now they were being asked to give up their lives for people who hated them. Dr. Park Mina was the first to speak. "Captain, I've been studying the harvester technology. Engineer Li Jun is right about the command structure. If we can disrupt their central coordination, the whole fleet might shut down. Or they might just build a new command ship," said Chief Medical Officer Dr. Cho Hai. "Maybe, but it's our only chance to stop them." More people spoke. Some argued for finding another way. Others said they should save themselves and let the Valorians face their fate alone. The debate went on for hours. Finally, Han Wu called for a vote. "All those in favor of the mission?" Hands went up around the room. Slowly at first, then more quickly. In the end, it was unanimous. 50,000 people choosing to die for a world that called them monsters. Li Jun began immediate preparations. The Defiance would need major modifications. Remove everything non-essential. Reinforce the hull. Reprogram the fusion reactors to overload at the moment of impact. It would take every engineer working around the clock. Dr. Park Mina started recording messages. Final words from the human survivors to anyone who might find them. She interviewed families, scientists, children, people who wanted the universe to know they had lived. "We're not doing this for glory," said a woman named Jin Su while holding her baby. "We're doing it because it's right. Because someone has to." An old man named Kim Tae spoke next. "The galaxy thinks we're monsters, but monsters don't sacrifice themselves for others. Maybe they'll understand that after we're gone." Meanwhile, on Valoria Prime, the Council continued to debate. Reports came in of harvester ships approaching the inner planets. The beautiful world of Crystalla Minor was consumed in hours. The research station on Epsilon Station simply vanished. Some younger Valorians began questioning their leaders. Why wouldn't they accept human help? What was worse than extinction? Ambassador Kang Su made one final plea to the Council. "The humans are offering to die for us. Doesn't that mean something?" Council leader Yoon Seo's response was cold. "It means they're even more dangerous than we thought. What kind of species sacrifices itself so easily? This is proof of their violent nature." The logic was twisted, but fear made people think in twisted ways. The Valorians would rather face death than admit they had been wrong about humanity. On the moon, Li Jun finished his calculations. "We'll have one chance, Captain. The Defiance will accelerate for 6 hours to reach maximum speed. At that velocity, even if the harvesters try to stop us, our momentum will carry us through." Han Wu nodded. He understood. There would be no backing out once they started. No changing their minds. In 18 hours, they would launch on their final mission. That night, Han Wu walked through the camp one last time. People were saying goodbye. Families held each other. Children played games, not understanding what was coming. Tomorrow, they would all be dead. But maybe, just maybe, their sacrifice would save a world that had never shown them kindness. The die was cast. There was no turning back now. The Defiance rose from the moon's surface for the last time. Captain Han Wu sat in his command chair watching Valoria Prime grow larger on the main screen. Somewhere on that beautiful world, crystal beings watched their approach with fear and confusion. "All stations report ready, Captain," said Communications Officer Kim Ray. Her voice was steady despite knowing she had hours to live. Han Wu activated the ship-wide communication system. "This is the captain. In 6 hours, we will reach the Koi harvester fleet. Our mission is simple. Ram their command ship and overload our reactors. We do this not for glory, but because it's right." Throughout the ship, 50,000 people listened. In the cargo bays that had been converted to living spaces. In the engine rooms where families huddled together. In the medical bay where Dr. Cho Hai tended to the sick who would never recover. "The Valorians call us monsters," Han Wu continued. "After today, they'll know what monsters really look like. And they'll know what heroes look like too." Engineer Li Jun worked frantically in the engine room. The fusion reactors hummed with barely controlled power. One mistake and they would explode early, wasting their sacrifice. Everything had to be perfect. "Reactor temperature is rising faster than expected," called his assistant. "So Min. The magnetic containment fields are straining. Hold them together. For 5 more hours," Li Jun replied. "That's all we need." On the bridge, Dr. Park Mina studied her sensors. The harvester fleet was vast beyond imagination. Thousands of ships arranged in perfect geometric patterns. At the center, a massive command vessel that dwarfed everything around it. "Captain, I'm detecting energy shields around the command ship. Multiple layers, they know we're coming." Han Wu nodded. He had expected this. "Commander Shin-A, what's our tactical situation?" Shin-A brought up a holographic display of the enemy formation. "They have us outnumbered 3,000 to 1, but they're arranged for harvesting, not combat. If we can punch through their outer screen, we'll have one shot at the command ship. Han Wu finished. Smaller human vessels launched from the Defiance's shuttle bays. These were mining ships, cargo haulers, and personal craft that had been converted into fighters. Each one carried volunteers, who had chosen to stay behind and clear a path for the main ship. Pilot Joe Bin sat in the cockpit of a converted mining ship. Beside him, Engineer Park Jae worked on a jury-rigged weapon system. "Think this will work?" Joe Bin asked. "Probably not," Park Jae admitted, "but we have to try." The first human fighters reached the Harvester fleet's outer edge. The enemy ships were enormous, each 1 kilometers long. Their hulls were smooth metal that reflected no light. They moved with mechanical precision, showing no emotion, no hesitation. Joe Bin's fighter dove toward a Harvester escort vessel. His makeshift weapons barely scratched its hull, but that wasn't the point. He aimed for the ship's communication array and fired everything he had. The mining laser cut through the antenna like paper. The Harvester ship suddenly veered off course, its connection to the fleet network severed. Other human fighters followed, Joe Bin's lead, targeting communication nodes and sensor arrays. Dr. Park Mina watched from the Defiance as the small human craft swarmed the massive enemy fleet. "Captain, they're disrupting the Harvester's coordination network. Some ships are beginning to attack each other." It was working. The Harvesters relied on perfect communication to function as one massive organism. Without that connection, they became confused and turned on each other. But the cost was terrible. Human fighters exploded against enemy hulls like insects hitting a windshield. Each small craft carried 20 or 30 people. Families who had volunteered to die so others might have a chance. "Engineer." So Min's voice crackled over the intercom from a damaged shuttle. "This is Shuttle 7. We're going down, but we took out their sensor grid. The path is clear." Her shuttle slammed into a Harvester ship in a ball of fire. 23 people dead in an instant. Their sacrifice opened a gap in the enemy formation. The Defiance accelerated through the gap. Enemy ships tried to intercept, but they were too slow, too confused. The human vessel's momentum carried it deeper into the fleet formation. "Command ship in sight," reported Kim Ray. "Distance 2,000 kilometers and closing." The Harvester command vessel was a nightmare of metal and machinery, 10 kilometers long and bristling with weapons. Energy shields flickered around its hull like purple lightning. It was a weapon designed to consume worlds. "Captain, they're targeting us with some kind of energy beam," warned Shin-Ae. The beam struck the Defiance's forward hull. Metal melted and corridors vented atmosphere. But the ship's momentum was too great to stop. Lee Jun's modifications held the vessel together as it plowed through space toward its target. In the engine room, the fusion reactors began their final sequence. Lee Jun's hands moved over the controls with practiced precision, temperature rising. Magnetic fields failing. In 60 seconds, the reactors would overload and tear the ship apart. 30 seconds to impact, called Kim Ray. Han Wu activated the ship-wide communication one final time. "This is for Earth. This is for our children. This is for everyone who called us monsters and learned too late what we really were." The Defiance struck the command ship's shields at nearly 10% of light speed. The energy barriers flared and collapsed. The human vessel punched through the enemy hull like a bullet through paper. In that moment, Lee Jun triggered the reactor overload. The explosion tore through both ships. Nuclear fire consumed metal and machinery. The blast wave expanded outward, carrying the energy of a small star. The Harvester command ship broke apart. Its quantum communication network collapsed. Across the fleet, thousands of enemy vessels suddenly lost coordination. They began firing on each other, no longer able to distinguish friend from foe. On Valoria Prime, crystal beings watched in stunned silence as the human ship died in nuclear fire. The monsters they had feared had just saved their world. Ambassador Kang Su stood in the council chambers as reports came in. The Harvester fleet was destroying itself. The threat was over. 50,000 humans had traded their lives for a world that had shown them nothing but contempt. "They're all gone," he said quietly. "Every last one." Council leader Yoon Seo stared at the tactical display showing the battle's aftermath. Why did they do it? Why sacrifice themselves for us? Kang Su looked at the crystal being with sad eyes. Because that's what humans do. We protect those who cannot protect themselves, even when they hate us for it. The shield of flesh and steel had held. Valoria Prime was safe. But the price had been everything humanity had left to give. 1 year later, the barren moon looked very different. Where the human refugee camp once stood, a crystal monument rose toward the stars. It was taller than any building on Valoria Prime. Its surface caught sunlight and threw rainbows across the gray landscape. Ambassador Kang Su stood before the monument, reading the names carved into its crystal walls. 50,000 names. Every human who had died to save a world that feared them. At the base, larger letters spelled out Captain Han Wu's final words. We were not monsters. We were just human. A group of young Valorians had come to visit the memorial. They moved carefully across the rocky ground, their crystal bodies reflecting the monument's light. These were the first of their people to set foot on the moon since the humans had lived here. Tell us about the one called Li Jun, asked a young Valorian named Yu Na. She was barely an adult by their standards, her crystal form still growing and changing. Kang Su smiled sadly. Li Jun was an engineer. He kept their ship running when everyone said it was impossible. In the end, he made sure the reactors exploded at exactly the right moment. Without his calculations, the sacrifice would have failed. Another young Valorian, called Shin Ho, pointed to Dr. Park Mina's name. What about her? She was a scientist who saw the danger coming. She tried to warn your people for weeks, but no one would listen. Even knowing she would die, she used her knowledge to guide the attack on the harvester weak points. The young Valorians listened in silence. These stories were very different from what they had been taught about humans. The Federation had called them savage monsters, but monsters did not sacrifice themselves for others. On Valoria Prime, the council chambers had changed too. The old crystal seats arranged in perfect circles had been replaced with a mixed design. Some seats were still crystal for the Valorians. Others were made of metal and stone, waiting for the day when other species might join their discussions. Council leader Yun Seo stood before a new addition to the chamber. It was a holographic display showing the final battle. The recording played continuously, showing the Defiance's last flight and the explosion that saved their world. We were wrong, she announced to the gathered council members. We let fear blind us to courage. We called them monsters while they prepared to become heroes. The Galactic Federation had been forced to change too. News of humanity's sacrifice had spread across the galaxy. The species they had branded as dangerous had died to save others. Federation officials could no longer justify their persecution of the remaining human colonies. In a historic session, the Federation Council voted to remove all restrictions on human space travel. The savage species classification was deleted from official records. In its place, they created a new designation, shield species, for those who protect others at any cost. But the changes went deeper than politics. On 100 worlds, children learned new stories. Teachers spoke of the humans who chose death over dishonor. Poems were written about the last flight of the Defiance. Songs carried the names of the 50,000 across the stars. Dr. Park Mina's final recordings had been broadcast throughout the galaxy. Her interviews with the human families became required viewing in schools. Children listened to Jin Su talking about doing what was right while holding her baby. They heard old Kim Tae explaining that real monsters don't sacrifice themselves for others. The recordings changed how people thought about courage and sacrifice. Being brave wasn't about having no fear. It was about being afraid and doing the right thing anyway. On the moon, Kang Su continued his tour with the young Valorians. They had spent the whole day walking through the preserved refugee camp. The metal shelters had been left exactly as they were. Children's drawings still decorated the walls. Gardens grew in makeshift boxes. Why did they make art if they knew they were going to die? Asked Yuna. Because that's what humans do, Kang Su replied. They create beauty even in the darkest times. They find hope when there is no reason for hope. As the sun set over Valoria Prime, the monument began to glow. The Valorians had embedded special crystals in its structure. that absorbed sunlight during the day and released it at night. The memorial became a beacon that could be seen from space. Ship captains passing through the system would often change course just to see the monument. It reminded them that heroism could come from unexpected places, that the species you feared might be the one that saved you. The harvester threat had not ended with the destruction of one fleet. Other machine swarms prowled the galaxy's edges, consuming worlds and building more ships. But now the universe was ready for them. Human military advisors worked with peaceful species to develop new tactics. The lessons learned from the defiances, sacrifice were shared freely. No world would face the harvesters alone and unprepared. The Valorians themselves had changed the most. Their beautiful research ships now carried weapons alongside their scientific instruments. They had learned that sometimes you must be ready to fight to protect what you love. But they also learned something else from the humans, that the strongest weapon was not technology or firepower. It was the willingness to sacrifice for others, to stand between the darkness and those who could not protect themselves. Ambassador Kang Su made one final stop before leaving the moon. At the very center of the monument was a small chamber. Inside, a holographic image showed the final moments of the Defiance. Captain Han Wu stood on his bridge as his ship dove toward the enemy. His last words echoed in the chamber. We were not monsters. We were just human. The hologram faded and new words appeared in the air. They were written in 100 languages from across the galaxy, but they all said the same thing. Here stood humanity. They were called monsters. They chose to be heroes. They shielded a world with their dead. May we prove worthy of their sacrifice. As Kang Su walked back to his shuttle, he looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there, other humans were building new colonies, raising families, creating art and music and stories. The species lived on. They would remember the 50,000 who died at Valoria. They would tell their children about the day humanity proved that monsters and heroes are separated only by the choices they make. And in the deep dark between the stars, where other harvesters still prowled, the galaxy waited with new hope. They had learned what humans could do when pressed to the edge. They had seen the price of calling courage monsters. Never again would they make that mistake. The shield of flesh and steel had taught them all a lesson they would never forget. The humans were not monsters. They were just human, and sometimes that was exactly what the universe needed.